being a parent, gosh, six times over, and being a grandparent is a lot of fun. We've seen technology come around. When I was first a parent, we really didn't have any kind of super technology, not like we have today,
No.
uh, and that has changed quite a bit. And with that, though, there are also some things to consider. And Tom Arnold is the author of a book, a best-selling book on Amazon, The Digital Detective: First Intervention, and joins us on Tech Talk Radio. Tom, it's great to talk to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
We've seen technology really grow in the last, 20, 25 years, but it's also grown with the dangers that we bring into our homes. And that is something that you have taken a look at. And you said something needs to change. Parents need to understand.
Yeah, exactly. And, it really has evolved. I mean, the concept of cybercrime in its own right, back in 1992, when the first internet sites were starting to sell things online, didn't even exist.
Yeah.
It was assumed that if somebody had a credit card and could give us a valid credit card, well, it must be them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And, that led to a very famous Peter Steiner cartoon in the New Yorker in 1993 that says on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog.
Good
And
point.
that is the flat out reality, both sides, the
Yeah.
customer and the merchant. Nobody knows you're a dog. The customer and the person they're communicating with. Nobody knows you're a dog, if you
Yeah.
would.
Now, Tom, you're a cybersecurity expert and digital forensics educator as well, and you've actually advised the United States Secret Service on some of these things as they were learning as well.
Yep.
What made you decide that you wanted to get into this line of work?
Well, in the earliest days, in when I took you back to 1992, um, friends of mine and colleagues had this great concept of selling software online and providing digital downloads of software. It seems very straightforward. Today, we wouldn't bat an eye at this. Everything comes that way.
Yeah,
Okay. But back then, it was quite a problem. And it was quite a problem to you had the problem of piracy. You'd sell one piece of software, but that piece of software was used 50 times. You had the
exactly.
problem with fraud. You didn't know that it was a dog. You sold a piece of software thinking you're making money and it's not. And in my earliest career, way back when, I was a policeman.
Hmm.
I actually arrested people for fraud.
Mm.
And so I said, I am going to try to solve that. Six patents later, they all assigned to other companies on fraud detection and the like. That was sort of the genesis of getting involved with the earliest days of cybercrime, to answer your question.
Were you still a Leo when the internet was growing? I mean, did you still see fraud, or no? It hadn't come about till years later.
No, I left law enforcement in 1986.
Mm.
So computers were big. They had punch cards to program them and all that sort of wonderful stuff. Uh, the concept of the internet, I did work for NASA during the earliest days of the ARPANET. And the team that was building the ARPANET was in my building, and I worked in an ancillary project with them. So Milo Medine and several people I could name that were doing the ARPANET, which of course evolved into the internet.
Now, Tom, I know that you decided to put together the digital detective first intervention after having an experience where you didn't think it was all that dangerous, and then you found out a little differently.
Yeah, there were really sort of two events that came up that caused me to think about a better way to educate. One is I've been teaching at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and at Cal State University at the time, and I've always been, teaching the topic of cybercrime detection, those sorts of things. And a lot of times I felt that I was shouting at a wall.
Mm.
And so the concept evolved when roughly 2.5 years ago now, my 7-year-old grandson was playing a very popular video game. Now, both of his parents are very high in the cybersecurity field. One of them is a director for one of the big companies in Washington, Washington State, in cybersecurity, and the other one is well educated in cybersecurity as well. So all the parental controls were active on this game. And it's really not to fault the game. But if you think about it, what makes cybercrime so unique is the ability of a criminal to look orthogonally at a problem to solve it. And in this situation, during the game, an avatar appeared to my grandson, held up a sign that said, "What's your name and where are you?"
Wow.
Holding up a sign,
Wow.
okay? And, who would have thunk at that point in time? Now, my grandson was smart enough to run to mom at that point because they had a very close bonded relationship. And mom's not going to get pissed off at the kid.
Mhm.
This is not necessarily the kid's fault. And it's a game that is really commonly used. So that was the number one event that I said, how do I try to get that bond between parents and their children over cybersecurity? The next event that took place that led me to start the Digital Detective was basically another family where at a Halloween sort of family gathering sort of thingy, she makes the comment to me that she finds it easier to talk to her kids about sex than cybersecurity.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, help is
Yeah.
needed here.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So my concept was to develop a story, develop characters that might be likable by the kids, and to build a book structure that was a nine and over reader, sort of a first chapter reader. So it's a first chapter reader. It's pretty big in size, physical size, but it's all double spaced, so it makes it really easy. And believe it or not, I would say 80% of the reviews, there's 40 reviews on Amazon right now on it. And if you read those, they love the fact that it's double spaced for their old, tired eyes.
That's
And I
perfect.
think, okay, that's not my primary audience, but I'll take it.
It's like
So
that's not where I was going, but hey, that's
it's
good.
not where I'm going,
Yeah.
but if I'm educating the parents and the grandparents, that's okay. If I try to tie, my objective is really to try to tighten that bond with the kids
Right.
and help educate the kids. And the kids find it fun reading about the topics. And so the book really is an introduction to the digital detective, a 14-year-old hero and a 14-year-old heroine as well with him, a real
Right.
powerful girl. And so they end up taking on cyber terrorism, which is
Good.
a category that is way out there. Okay. The next story, which I hope to have out in January, is, believe it or not, I'm going to try to do it as lightly as I can, is going to take on sextortion and human trafficking.
Yeah. Something we
So,
don't like to talk about that, but the fact is it happens and it happens every
oh
day.
yeah,
That if somebody can find a way to make money off somebody else's downfall, they will. And that's
absolutely.
yeah. Oh boy.
And
Now,
it's almost like an extension of cyberbullying. I'm sorry to talk over you there, but it's almost an
no, no.
extension of cyberbullying. You know, uh, there's two other concepts that I'm really trying to profess, and that is that there's two different things. You have friends online, and in one of your earlier shows, you actually talked about this. You're in a chat group on Instagram with your 5 known friends.
Yep.
It's really them. That's friends online. Then there's this thing called online friends. You're in a larger forum, call it TikTok, call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter the tool, but
Yeah.
you're in a much larger forum, and people who profess to be your friends are online with you. You have no actual idea as to who they actually are. Now, both groups can be very dangerous. In the friends online, where you know everybody, you don't know if one of the friends' computers or mobile phones has been taken over by someone else and that someone else is actually behaving like them online. You don't know that.
You've assumed their identity, possibly.
That's correct. You assume they're a friend. Online friends, you have to believe that they're strangers. So when I see in a restaurant the parents doling out the iPads to the
Mhm.
kids to keep them quiet at the dinner table during the restaurant meal, I really have to think about this and go, there's a similarity to my own childhood. When I was a kid and my mom wanted to go to the grocery store for an hour, she would drop me off at a park and say, "Go have fun while I go to the store. And when the street lights turn on, come home for dinner."
Mm. I think a lot of us went through that, Tom.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. It was
Yeah.
standard in the 60s. Okay. But nowadays, no parent would do that.
Even
No,
just
no,
riding
no,
your
no,
bike
no,
around
no,
the
no.
street, you wouldn't even do that.
So same thing handing out the iPads. It's kind of the virtual playground is
So it's
my take.
putting it akin to, giving your kid a tablet and saying, okay, here, yeah, I've got to go
Yeah,
do the
sit over in
dishes.
the corner and shut up.
Yeah, I've got to go put the groceries away or whatnot. And then that's like sending him to the playground and just saying, here, go have fun. We wouldn't even think about doing that today.
Correct.
Wow. It is dangerous on a lot of, we've talked about smartphones because we think of phones, we think of communication, but within the games, within some of the apps that are available on our tablets or iPads or whatnot, there is that communication process that some parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles that are maybe watching younger kids have no idea that people can communicate. I do words with friends. People
Oh,
send
yeah.
me notifications on that. Now they don't know how old I am.
No.
So again, people can still communicate within some of these games.
Yeah, you can create a complete sort of false identity of yourself, and that's why I refer to them as avatars. It's an avatar of you. It doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. I mean, that's sort of the intent. Here's my avatar. Okay. It's my alter ego, whatever.
When we
Okay.
had Tatiana Jordan on talking about
Mhm.
her bark technologies and stuff, we think about parental controls. Justin uses one of those services as well. That is not the end all, is it?
No,
What
that's my
can,
point about holding up the sign.
yeah,
You're talking about an avatar in a game who's going to hold up a sign, which is an allowed sort of feature of the game.
wow. Now, Tom, what can parents do? Obviously, they can get the digital detective, the first intervention. And this is not just for parents. This is really for, as you mentioned, for people of all ages to kind of understand because it can be a little daunting. I've talked with a lot of, our listeners that have called into the radio station when I'm here that have said, I don't understand it. How do you explain it? What can a parent or somebody that is a caregiver do to help understand this?
I think there's a few major points in this, even though you yourself or the person themselves, the parent, may not be, super technically adept, if you would. I think private information is still private information and still sort of teaching kids what that term actually means. Okay. It can mean the name of the family dog. That can be utilized by a bullier who wants to bully someone. Okay. All of that information gets built up. So maintaining private information private and sort of always enforcing to the kids what exactly that is. It's not just username and password, it's not just their name and address. It's much more than that. And they have to really be conscious of that. If they're on a game or in a chat session, what sort of information they release into the chat session? Oh, my family, we're all away on a vacation. It's so boring. My parents, blah, blah, blah. What a boring time I'm having online
Right.
with all my buddies here. All of those things can be used against someone. So the second one is definitely be careful the type of information that they actually release, even if they're upset. The third thing I think is major, and where technology is concerned, I actually believe that the parents and the kids have to have an agreement between them that this is open territory for them to talk in. The parents are not going to overreact, okay? And in turn, the kid's not going to try to hide things necessarily. So if something bad shows up, I mean, artificial intelligence today is a whole nother topic as to how it's affecting things like sextortion.
Hmm.
You're able to actually build images that really do look like the person
Yeah.
and use that for sextortion. If the kids know that they didn't pose for that picture and they didn't do that, going to mom and dad is extremely important. And it's tough as a parent to maintain that calm so that you don't destroy that relationship that brought it to your attention that's now protecting your kid is the point. Okay.
Like,
That's the
I
other
want to,
key thing.
Tom, I want to say something too, and I've thought about this as well. You know, we as parents tend to share a lot sometimes on, we'll just use one of the biggest ones, of course, Facebook and Instagram, but of course, you may share on Snap or whatever.
Uh-oh.
But when the parents share this information on social media, those that, stranger danger, that want to do harm and want to bring kids in or find kids to traffic, they can
Correct.
use that information. Oh, look, they lost a dog back some years ago. Let's talk about how I lived down the street and I remember their dog. And
Uh-huh.
they create that bond with that child, and suddenly the child thinks it's a friend that knew mom and dad and has been around for a while. That information we put as parents online can also be dangerous for our children.
Absolutely true.
Yeah,
And don't underestimate the fact that the parents are at risk as well by themselves. We're talking about kids, okay, and the bond with kids, okay, because they're neophytes in the woods. There's a significant percentage of neophytes in the woods that are also parents,
true.
which is also, a challenge. I guess the final thing to state is staying close to what's happening in general as far as the games and making certain parental controls are extremely important and having those controls up. Knowing how to reach the game provider in some way, shape, or form. Knowing that I call them video games, but
Yeah.
games can actually be used to recruit people for fringe organizations. It's well documented that Al Qaeda even uses this.
Yep.
Okay.
Cartels have been using them as well.
Cartels use it, and right-wing groups are just as bad. The fringe groups on either side. Okay. So having to sort of educate the kids to this so they don't get pulled into that situation is a whole another problem. And that's what they need to keep up on as sort of my fourth.
Well, I'll tell you what, Tom, this has been a great discussion. I want our listeners to check it out, The Digital Detective First Intervention. I want to get you back on the show again because really you provide so much great information. And I definitely want to check out the book available on Amazon. Tom Arnold, thank you so much for coming on Tech Talk Radio.
And hey, thank you very much for having me on today.